All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here in week 4 of our fall season and in our 4th interview on our Joyful Journey series. Today, I am so happy to be joined by Dylan Beckner of Beckner Consulting. So Dylan is a therapist and a counselor out in Loudoun County, and she's incredibly active in the community. And this week, our girls at practice are learning about emotions and self-talk. And we thought, who better than to chat with about this than a licensed counselor herself. So Dylan, thank you so much for joining me today and being here with our Go-To community.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So do you want to share a little bit just about yourself and your counseling and what you guys focus on?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been in practice since 2020. I have two other therapists that work for me too, and we work primarily with people of all different ages who experience things like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, trauma, self-esteem issues, things like that. So we definitely see a lot of adolescents and kids as well.
Awesome. Wonderful. So like I mentioned, you're perfect to have this conversation with, since this is what our girls are diving into this week with their coaches and their teams. Is kind of doing the tough work about our emotions and how we talk to ourselves, which are really important and add up to how we have, solid mental health. So my first question for you is, let's focus on chatting about emotions first. So I have the perspective as a coach, and I really like how we approach getting girls to think about emotions. No emotion is labeled as good or bad. We try to get them to reframe and start thinking about, well, wait, what emotion is comfortable for me to feel and what emotion might be uncomfortable for me to feel? So why do you think that framing is important, especially when working with youth? So I'll let you go ahead and answer.
Yeah, I think I love this. I think it's such a great thing to teach kids so that they can take it as they get to be adolescents and adults. I see so many people who feel incredibly guilty when they have an emotion that might typically be labeled as bad, something like anger or sadness or depression or even anxiety. And so when you just remove that label from it, you just feel more free to have whatever emotion comes up for you without feeling that guilt or even shame about it, which is super important. I also think that it, just along with not feeling guilty or not feeling any shame. What was I going to say? No, I forget.
That's okay.
Oh, but that it can be great because when you feel anxious or you're feeling sad or something, we don't want to make it seem like you should never experience that emotion. All of our emotions are there for a reason and they do
Mhm.
protect us. And so when we're feeling anxious about something, it's usually because we feel like we need to get away from it, and that can be helpful sometimes, not every time. But
Yeah.
it's good to have that to fall back on.
No, that's really great. And, part of what we do at practice this week, we're getting girls think about our emotions is kind of do it exactly what you talked about. Think of a scenario you've been in where you felt that guilt or you have felt shame or you felt joy or you felt elation, and just getting girls to think through, well, yeah, I know how to identify that emotion. I experienced it already in the past. So it's okay to experience it again based on what scenario
Mm-hmm.
I'm in or what might be happening in my life. So why do you think adults can also benefit from that framing as well?
Oh, I think it's so important for adults. I think a lot of adults haven't always learned this, which is why Girls on the Run is so awesome and such a great program to be a part of. Um, but also adults can help to teach this to the younger generation. And so if adults can understand this and they can do better for the kids that they're teaching or their own children or just people that they're interacting with.
Yeah. So, our coaches are obviously working with the girls, modeling this behavior for them this week. What advice would you give to parents or caregivers to kind of reinforce that, exactly what you said, of adults modeling the behavior at home when they're not at Girls on the Run practice?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just validating emotions. So when I say like validating an emotion, it just means if someone's feeling anxious or feeling sad, it's like, I get it. This is really difficult for you right now. And that's okay because we'll get through it together. Or is there something that you would like to do because you're feeling sad? Like it's okay to feel sad and we can try to do something to fix it, but we might not always be able to.
Yeah, definitely. So the advice that I noticed you were doing there is kind of giving like concrete examples, and that's what we try to do
Mhm.
at practice as well. So the girls have like concrete, like this is a takeaway that I can have right now, but use beyond practice in my real life.
Mhm.
So, the next step, after we talk about what emotions are comfortable and uncomfortable, is we work with our goater girls on expressing it. And the way that we do that for them is through a really simple framing statement. So we teach them, I feel insert emotion here when the proof of whatever the scenario is happening, because, so you're, validating it for yourself. And then I would like for you too. So kind of navigating of a change of behavior or a reinforcement of behavior. So why do you think that framing is beneficial? And how do you see it as, being important to expressing our emotions versus bottling them up?
I again love this one. It's something that I teach a bunch of my clients too, or I statements, and I
Mhm.
find that I do it so much with adults, and it's like almost groundbreaking for them because they've never heard of something like this. So I love that the girls are going to be learning this at such a young age too. Um, but it's incredibly important because it's learning how to communicate your emotions effectively, instead of just bottling them up. And then eventually things will just turn into a volcano. So if you don't talk about it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And then finally, you'll scream
Yeah.
or it'll just blow up or, get super angry or something. And this really helps to prevent that. But also I think it's just so great because no one can tell you that you don't feel a certain way. So if you're saying I feel angry, no one can sit there and be like, no, you aren't. No, you can't be angry. And
Right.
it's just a great way to be able to actually communicate what it is that you're feeling and to also tell somebody why and what it is that they can do to try to help, even if it just means being alone.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, really good, when I've been a coach and I've done it with the girls, they always kind of gravitate towards that maybe intense emotion of, well, I got really upset because you did this. But I also tell them it's a great way with your friends, your family, your teachers to kind of offer and share and joy that you're feeling. Like, I feel so confident when you help me with my homework because it makes me feel like I can do it. I would love for you to keep helping me with my homework, and getting them to also use that I statement framing to really shed the light on the positives that they have in their life. And
Mhm.
again, helping the people in their lives know that you can keep doing that positive behavior, and that's just going to keep positively impacting this girl.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like when you give that positive feedback to somebody, they're going to be more likely to do it. So if you're telling someone, "Oh, I really like when you help me with with my homework," that person's probably going to be more likely to continue helping you with your with homework.
Yeah, yeah. And I can also, like, as adults, when we hear that from kids, you're like, oh my gosh, it's the best, like, biggest compliment of my day. If I get a kid to be
Right.
like, Coach Ashley, you really helped me out, and I feel great because of it. I'm like, this is made my week, made my month, made my year.
Exactly. Absolutely. I agree.
Awesome. So we're going to pivot a little bit. So we talked about emotions and communicating them. So now I want to talk about self-talk.
Mhm.
Really critical and important, I think, especially for girls in this age group, because this is kind of the moment where, a lot of girls are getting cell phones, they're logging online for the first time. Mom's giving them access to the, parent guided Instagram. Here's TikTok. And there's a lot of communication happening to our girls and youth in general that, some of it's good, some of it's bad. It's a whole mix of things. And we know as adults that self-talk is so critical to our individual mental and emotional health, but why do you think it's important for youth, especially in this day and age, knowing that they have this whole macrocosm of influence? Why do you think it's important that youth can identify positive and negative self-talk?
Hmm. Yeah, I think especially, well, both are very important, positive and negative. Positive more so if you can
Yeah.
identify those. Just because the more positivity that we can really bring in, the better. Our brains tend to focus on some of that negative stuff, and it's just not helpful for us. But being able to recognize it when it is there is fantastic, and we want to harness that in whatever way we can. Like I'll try to have some of the kids that I work with, or even adults too, write down the positive self-talk on like post-it notes and put them on their mirror or put them around their room somewhere or something, so that it's something that they're consistently seeing and reading to themselves or saying to themselves. And then when it comes to the negative self-talk, you still want to identify it. You still want to know what it is, because for some reason it's popping up.
Right.
And then to try and challenge it, it doesn't have to be like the complete opposite. You know, if someone thinks I'm ugly, we don't have to try to believe, oh, I'm so pretty. That might not be very easy to do.
Mhm.
But if you can sort of try to change that thought even just a little bit from I'm ugly to um, I, I'm working to love my appearance the way that it is. Something that's more in like the middle ground. I always try to tell people to think of a neutral statement. So it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be doesn't have to be positive, doesn't have to be negative, but finding that gray area in life is key. And if you can do it with self-talk, you're going to be in a good place.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think that a lot of times we do think in that binary that it's either super positive or it's super negative. And like you mentioned, that gray area in between is also a healthy state to be in, because you're not in the negative. So we've moved out of there, but also realizing that sometimes we're not always going to get all the way to the positive.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've definitely witnessed it, with coaching. I thinking about, we give them this activity where they write down two set negative self-talk statements, and they're usually something very generic, like I can't do it. And it's like, well, we don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it is, but all right, well, if you can't do it, what could you do instead? You can't do,
Exactly.
let's say you can't run your 5K right away. What can you do? You can ask for help. You can ask, hey, can somebody come run or walk with me, and know that you have a buddy there to help out. And that's kind of that gray area, like you're mentioning, of,
Mm-hmm.
you can get to those gray area steps to get to that positive outcome, positive self-talk as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's such a great thing to try to do and to get in the habit of.
Yeah, awesome. So what tool or advice would you give? Let's go with kids first, like youth first. What advice would you give? What kind of framing to walk through that negative self-talk into getting on the more positive side of the spectrum?
Mm-hmm. So I think I love to write everything down, maybe a little old school in that way, or even if it's typing something up on a phone or a computer or something, but writing out that negative thought. And sometimes it can be helpful to write out what the positive one is right next to it so that you can see what the total opposite is. But you don't have to keep that one. That can just be like, we can look at the opposites and then try to find something in the middle ground. And that's where I really love starting statements with like, I'm learning to, or I'm trying to, because it doesn't have to mean that you're there already. It just means that you're putting effort into it. And I think that can help to really try to get to that, like that more neutral statement. And then eventually you can build on it, and maybe you are able to get to that more positive place.
That's awesome. That's a really good tool. I hadn't even thought of that, but the I'm learning to, or I'm working on, those are fantastic
Mm-hmm.
statements that you can take and utilize every day. Of we're all working to make ourselves better. So
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. Is that the same
Yeah.
advice you would give to adults as well?
Yeah, actually it is. And even like other qualifying words, language is just so important for our brain. But even words like enough, like I'm doing enough helps to kind of qualify a statement so that it just feels like it's a little more attainable, or you can actually get to that place without being like fully there yet, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
Well, Dylan, this has been a wonderful chat. You have enlightened us with your wisdom and your experience as a counselor. And I just love how this is going to completely fall straight into alignment with what the girls are learning about. And I think there's some nuggets in this conversation that the girls can take away. And I think there's some great nuggets that the coaches and their caregivers and any other adults in our community can take away. So we're really grateful. Do you have any last kind of closing words that you want to share as well?
I'm just so happy to have been a part of this. So thank you for inviting me. And I hope that the girls and parents and whoever is watching this finds it helpful. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, we will see everybody back next week for another really exciting guest. And until then, use these words of positivity, work on your self-talk this week, and don't be afraid to share your emotions. We'll see you guys next time.